इंडिया की बेटी है। फिलहाल आप उसे माल, पटाखा, तोप, छमिया, आइटम, फुलझड़ी कुछ भी बोल देते हैं। उसे आदत पड़ गई है इन नामों की। वैसे दुर्गा, काली और लक्ष्मी के नाम पर भी हर सुबह मंदिरों में उसकी पूजा होती है। पर गौर से सुनेंगे तो हर नुक्कड़ के पीछे वाली गली में रात को उसकी नीलामी का मातम जरूर सुनाई देगा।
Human and trafficking, two apparently harmless words when placed together put the entire civilization to shame. Not only is it a lucrative crime for perpetrators with an annual profit as high as 36 billion a year, it also ranks as the world's most profitable crime after illicit drugs and arms trafficking.
1 lakh children go missing in India every year according to the Home Ministry. These children are exploited, they're abused, forced into domestic servitude or exploited and sent into sex trafficking or trafficked for labor. Much of the discourse on human trafficking in India has been around source and destination, with children and women being transported from these areas to the city and sold into a brothel or into a red light district.
India tops the global slavery index with 18 million people enslaved in modern slavery, 5 times more than any other country in the world. According to the latest report of the National Crime Records Bureau, sex trafficking is on a rapid growth in the past 5 years. Number of reported cases increased over 25% in 2015. Further, it is assumed that only 30% of total cases are reported, and actual numbers are 4 to 5 times higher. Even though slavery was abolished over 200 years ago, why is human trafficking still a reoccurring phenomenon in modern-day society? Who are the perpetrators? And more importantly, what is being done to put an end to this inhumane justice? Baduria, an ordinary village on the India-Bangladesh border, away from the hustle and yaw of city life, in the lap of natural abundance, Rehana's childhood was pure and promising. Rehana was from a poor family. Teenage marriages for young females is a common practice in such remote villages. Here, parents, under extreme vulnerabilities, envisage a brighter future for themselves and their daughters through lucrative marriage prospects. Such a proposal was presented to Rehana's parents through a businessman from Banaras.
Rehana was in 9th standard and quite a meritorious student, but nobody bothered to ask her for her opinion before getting her married to this much older man. Her parents did not know he was already married.
I was only 15 and wanted to study further like my friends, but it was too late.
Trafficking is taking place under the guise of marriage. So people are actually coming from states like Punjab and Haryana, which have a highly skewed sex ratio. They're coming to these communities, identifying vulnerable, highly impoverished families and saying, sell us your daughter, we'll get her married, there'll be no cost. And she's taken to a temple, married in a day, the family is given money, and then she's forced into a life of domestic servitude, forced to sleep with different members of the family, or then sold to somebody else altogether. And this is just one of the ways in which trafficking is taking place.
Since trafficking is an economic activity, then there has to be an end use of this child that has been trafficked. So the child will go into bonded labor, will be given in maybe in child marriage, or end up as a child prostitute. So there are many forms of abuse of a child that has been trafficked and separated from the family.
Poverty continues to be the most common root cause of sex trafficking, which gives ways to triggers such as ignorance, lack of education, and unlawful stigmas, increasing vulnerability and risk factors of the victims. As we speak to Tamina, another trafficking survivor, her past resonates the same painful chords.
We are 7 siblings. My father used to be a van puller. Later, he became blind, and mother was a domestic helper. We were always under tremendous financial crisis. There was never enough food for all of us. We had no one to blame. At a very early age, we realized we have to start earning to survive. There was a distant relative, a cousin, who often used to visit our house. He was aware of our conditions. Once he offered me and my younger sister Noor jobs of domestic helper at his sister's place in Mumbai. It was a worthwhile offer for us to reduce the burden on our family. Moreover, we had no idea of what human trafficking was back then.
Trafficking has many faces and is actually very difficult to recognize sometimes because it's so much a part of the fabric of everyday life in a basti. So for instance, my trafficker is now no longer just that pimp. He's also my neighbor, my relative, my uncle, my aunt.
These girls are essentially looked at as a burden, a financial burden on the family who sometimes willingly sell them, but sometimes even lack of awareness causes the traffickers to easily lure these girls with the hopes of a better future through employment or marriage. What it comes down to is that trafficking a girl all the way from the source to the destination is an extremely lucrative business. Traffickers, brothel owners make anywhere up to 70% profit margins. Even along this chain, it is extremely sophisticated because traffickers use different modes of transportation, but also they bribe several officials along the way so that they can cross borders.
Paying off this so-called arbitrary debt to their owners is an indefinite and fatal process, which often leads to physical risks such as drug addiction, contracting STDs, sterility, miscarriages, forced abortions, virginity restoration, amongst others. Psychological effects include clinical depression, post-traumatic stress syndrome, etc. Over 71% of trafficked minors show suicidal tendencies. Our next featured trafficking survivor, Fatima, is such an example of someone who's lost their mental stability.
We rescued Fatima 7 months back. Once we brought her home, I found her behavior a little odd. After spending some days with her, I realized she is suffering from some kind of mental disorder due to the trauma she had to undergo while she was trafficked. The doctor told she needs time, love and support from her family to recover. But what they offered her is quite the opposite.
They rarely let me meet my children. Neither they take me home. I miss them a lot.
Gender discrimination plays a crucial role in triggering chances of trafficking. Fatima was tortured by her own family even before she was trafficked, and the only reason we can think of is her gender. The very fact that she would not protest lets them to harass her. And at the same time, constant domestic abuse makes them open to the idea of accepting unrealistic and unverified job offers from faraway places. We, as a society, carry a double standard in the way we treat women. In one hand, we worship female deities and then beat women at home.
See, as far as Indian scriptures are concerned, there is no gender discrimination of any sort. In fact, women are given first place. Young girls are worshipped as incarnation of Mother Divine. So, but unfortunately, these crimes that we see in these days, they only indicate we have moved away from our roots.
साबुन, बिस्किट, आटे, दाल के जैसे बिकता रहता है उसका बचपन। और ताज्जुब की बात तो ये है कि उसे पता भी नहीं चलता कि वो बिक रही है। कैसे? बस ये मत पूछिए कैसे। कभी दोस्त धोखा दे जाता है तो कभी मुंह बोली मौसी, कभी अच्छी वाली नौकरी का वादा तो कभी विदेश से शादी का नाता, और तो और कभी कभी तो अपने ही माँ बाप। कुछ ही पैसों के लिए उसका हाथ छोड़ जाते हैं उस अंधेरी गली में जहाँ मौत किश्तों में आती है, सांस रुकने तक।
Soon after the marriage, I had to leave my family and was taken to Banaras, a place so different than my village. I couldn't understand their language. I was never allowed to contact my family. Beating, making me starve was a regular thing, but they also started forcing me to prostitution. I used to serve even 4 to 5 customers at a time. Soon, I got pregnant. But my husband and his wife still kept on getting people in my room. It was unbearable. I still remember I delivered the child on my own without any medical help. Even the newborn couldn't change them a bit. Soon after the delivery, they again started bringing customers to me. But I decided to take a stand this time for the sake of my newborn and finally said no. Finally, they decided to sell both me and my newborn daughter to an Arabian old man for a sum of rupees 500,000. The deal was final and he took the advance already.
And this is really where the brutal journey of the girl begins, right from the home to where she's sold multiple times along the trafficking route. And not just that, she is drugged and raped several times to ensure that she is broken in by the time she reaches the final destination so that she's less resistant.
I and Noor boarded a train to Mumbai with their distant cousin in the hope of a job. Soon after arrival, he brought a lady whom he introduced as his sister. She took me along to a place which looked nothing like a domestic household, as I was told earlier. Our cousin took Noor to a different brothel and sold her there himself. We never saw each other again.
Tamina's new owner proved to be an epitome of inhumanity. Soon after she was purchased, she was thoroughly scanned and deemed as unattractive and thus of less value, which essentially meant that Tamina would face more difficult and perverted customers with less to pay. She was completely unaware of the extent of despair and misfortune that awaited her forthcoming distress. By then, all she realized was the toll of getting a job came heavy to her life. While Tamina was subjected to immense brutality on a regular basis. From bondage, cigarette burns, hormonal injections, or chili powder placed on her wounds, Tamina faced it all. Every day, she prayed for death, but death was a luxury she could see but was not allowed to embrace.
My cigarette burn marks are still there, all over my body. I still can't believe, how can a human be so cruel to another?
Tamina's sister Noor was fortunate to find a customer who helped her escape from the brothel, and they eventually married.
उड़ीसा में बाढ़ आती है, नेपाल में भूकंप या फिर चेन्नई में सुनामी, तो लाखों लोग बेघर हो जाते हैं। ऐसी तबाही के माहौल में भी हजारों बच्चियां रातों रात रेस्क्यू के नाम पर गायब कर दी जाती हैं।
Whatever little we had got all washed away in flood that year. Our piece of paddy field got all withered, leaving us with only hunger and epidemic. In such a situation, I met this lady who promised me of a decent job in Delhi. Later, I found that I was taken to Kashmir and not Delhi. I was forced to marry a Kashmiri handicapped man in a joint family. I told them I am already married, but nobody cared to listen. They used to converse in a local language which was unfamiliar to me. I was given some kind of drug, after which I used to feel dizzy.
The whole family in Kashmir used to sexually abuse Fatima. She tried to escape a few times but got caught thanks to the local cops who were too loyal to her offenders. She used to be drugged regularly so that she doesn't show resistance. By the time she finally managed to escape successfully, she had already lost her sanity. She was pregnant and was made to abort it. Sometimes she seems perfectly fine. The next moment, she would attack her own child for no reason.
When they are going back home, to make sure that that work with the family takes place. Is the family ready to receive the child? Is the family accepting that the child needs that safe space and community? And how do you create that at that source area?
I knew this was a do or die situation for both of us. I had to take the risk to save the future of my newborn. It was early morning. Somehow I sneaked out of the house and made a call to my home for immediate rescue. My father got in touch with Kanika Kapoor's NGO.
The NGO faced extreme time pressure. Rehana's family, devastated in disbelief of their daughter's tragic ordeal, desperately contacted the police. They were able to trace the location of her call and immediately made their way to Banaras. With the collaboration of the local police, they raided the perpetrator's home and were able to secure Rehana and her daughter's rescue. However, her alleged husband and attested wife were quick to flee the scene. Rehana was one of those rare 1 or 2% of trafficked victims who could manage to get rescued. The rest of them remain untraceable forever.
I and my daughter stay with my parents now. I work in a factory. My daughter started going to school. I avoid recalling my horrific past to others as I don't want it to affect my daughter's future. I want to give her a happy and dignified life and to send that man and his wife in prison for life. They deserve a life imprisonment.
If you look at that figure, up to 40% of those are young adolescent girls below the age of 18 years. So the magnitude of the problem is so large and grave that India as a nation can't afford to ignore it. It's high time we acknowledge that trafficking is a fundamental violation of human rights.
Later I got to know, after eloping from the brothel, Noor got married to her customer who helped her escape. With his help, she sent a letter to my home informing everything that has happened to us after we left with this cousin.
Noor's letter shook the family once again. Making ends meet was a daily burden for families like Tamina's. Searching for missing girls in a faraway city without much resources seemed a far cry for Tamina's mother. It took nearly 3 years to track her down in Kamatipura, the red light district of Mumbai. When Tamina was found, it was indeed too late. Her frail body had almost given up on her numb soul. She was no more than a living corpse, thanks to the inhumane brutality she was subjected to. Tamina was under the deadly clutch of AIDS.
और ये सब बरसों से होता आ रहा है, क्योंकि लोग ऐसा चाहते हैं। अपनी ज़रूरत पूरी करके उसे फेंक देते हैं, उसी गंदगी में सड़ने के लिए, मरने के लिए। और इतना कुछ होने के बाद भी अगर कोई लड़की इनके चंगुल से बच के वापस आ भी जाती है, तो वही लोग उसे बदचलन करार देते हैं। पर ये लोग हैं कौन? उसी के जैसे एक इंसान ही ना, जिनके बस 2 हाथ और 2 ही पैर हैं। तो फिर इंसान होके और एक इंसान का सौदा करने का हक इन लोगों को किसने दिया? उसकी वो आखिरी चीख, उसका पूरा वजूद दब के रह गया और हम देख के भी अनदेखा करते रहे। हम कैसे भूल गए कि कभी उसका भी एक फूल जैसा महकता खिलखिलाता बचपन हुआ करता था। क्या हम कभी उसे लौटा सकेंगे? उसकी मासूमियत, वो खुशहाली, वो बालों को सहलाती उसकी माँ की उंगलियां, वो सुकून, वो आज़ादी। आज वो अपना हक मांग रही है, कल शायद छीन के ले ले। और क्या पता, कल उसकी जगह शायद हमारा कोई अपना हो। अब ये तो हम पर है कि हम कब जागेंगे।
We have proposed a 4P framework for tackling the issue. The 4 Ps include prevention, protection, prosecution, and fostering partnerships. The first P, which focuses on prevention, aims at reducing the vulnerabilities at the source.
When a child goes missing, if a family doesn't have a birth certificate document, there's absolutely you can't prove that child exists. And that is what additionally puts them at risk, because you can't file an FIR at a police station. How do we connect communities to these key services? Let us bring that ward member, let us bring that officer to the community. Let's enroll children to get this critical document. Talking to people in the community to say, why are birth certificates important? How is this keeping your child safe? And then linking them to that service.
Working with girls to improve education levels, generating more awareness within the communities about the issues of trafficking. Also, I think creating better livelihood options for girls and reducing gender discriminatory behaviors.
जब रेसलिंग शुरू की तो सब बोलते थे कि ये लड़कों का गेम है, लड़कियां आप क्यों जा रहे हो। शुरू के 2.5-3 साल में बहुत ज़्यादा चैलेंजेस आए, सब बोलते थे कि नहीं कर पाएगी या हार आई। तो धीरे-धीरे मेडल्स आना शुरू हुए तो उन्हीं लोगों की सोच बदली है और वही लोग आते हैं, फ़ोटोज़ खिंचवाते हैं और बोलते कि हमारे बच्चों को भी रेसलिंग सिखाओ, लड़कियों को सिखाओ। ये बात सुन के बहुत खुशी होती है कि मैंने कितनी गर्ल चाइल्ड को और उनके पेरेंट्स को इंस्पायर्ड किया है।
Building up physical strength and learning self-defense techniques are crucial components of the prevention module of trafficking. A stronger victim would be physically more resistive, reducing the probability of getting trafficked. On the other hand, spreading awareness of the crime acts as the foundation of the prevention process.
We're building circles of safety by working with adolescent boys and girls through our program Shakti, creating networks of girls' safety, and similarly with boys through Chauraha, so that together by working with boys, girls, adults and government, we can build safe communities for children.
The second P, which focuses on protection, really looks at the care of the girl right from when she is rescued to her rehabilitation and reintegration into society.
With our very limited resources, we train these rescued girls various vocational trainings, such as the basics of computer operation, sewing machine, making handicrafts. Through these tomorrow, they can find that lost identity, self-confidence and financial independence.
And girl-child education and Save the Girl Child. This is another project, because it involves a lot of expenditure in marrying a girl, and then the girl goes to the boy's house. The parents feel it's an economic burden on them.
And so this means working with the girl to ensure that she gets the right kind of vocational training to be able to become financially independent, that she gets life skills to be able to handle challenges in life.
In Chauraha, similarly, we are working with boys to help them recognize warning signs and also to say, how does gender and masculinity play a role in your understanding of your social system, in their everyday experience?
We are making effort to reverse this idea in their mindset, and we are making good progress in creating such an awareness.
When I was in Meghalaya, some girls they ill treat for them, like they make them prostitute and they do such bad thing and they rape them, and it was so bad that.
Corlia, along with 75 other minor girls with troubled background from Meghalaya, was sheltered in the residential school of Art of Living for a better tomorrow.
But when I came here, I don't know nothing about what's going on there in my place, but yeah, I'm so happy with Guruji and as my guru, and it feels like I'm in heaven.
The ministry also has a website called Khoya Paya and Track the Child. The website acts as a facilitation medium for restoring these children to their families.
The third P in our 4P framework looks at effective prosecution. Prosecution for the perpetrators, who are the traffickers, the brothel owners and the pimps. Because what prosecution does is it increases the risk of doing business for these perpetrators.
The prosecution rate in comparison to the number of trafficking crimes that occurred in 2015 lies shamefully at 0.09%, partially due to corruption in law enforcement, lack of evidence, delay in court trials, but largely due to the absence of any comprehensive criminal charges against traffickers. On the 30th of May 2016, India's Honourable Minister for Women and Children, Mrs. Maneka Gandhi, announced a draft of the first ever comprehensive anti-human trafficking law for India.
The National Legal Services Authority had submitted a report to the Supreme Court of India. So the proposed draft bill is an effort to plug the loopholes and bring additional crimes which have not found place in the Indian Penal Code. It recognizes the safety of trafficking victims after rescue.
It is being recognized as an organized crime. So far we had only SITA and this Prevention of Immoral Trafficking Act, and these acts were not sufficient. Then new elements have been added.
The fourth P in our framework focuses on building partnerships. Partnerships not just within NGOs working on the sector, but also amongst different stakeholders, law enforcement machinery such as police, your anti-human trafficking units, your shelter home workers. Because trafficking is a cross-sector and cross-border issue, it requires different stakeholders to communicate with each other and share information amongst each other.
We have established a bridge between these girls with the government and police officials to ensure they are provided with the basic needs of livelihood, such as ration, sanitation, and employment opportunities. Police officials have taken an active role in our anti-trafficking rallies. We can surely bring in a better tomorrow for the trafficking survivors if we join hands.
To life, the greatest gift of all, we are the world.
Trading of a human is a barbaric, dreadful scar on humanity. But destroying the future potential of these innocent girls is even more fatal for the society. Given the basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, and education, who knows tomorrow how many athletes, doctors, scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, leaders the nation would get to be proud of. Come, let us give them a chance to live, a chance to shine like a star. I, Juhi Chawla Mehta, say no to human trafficking.
मुझे बोझ ना समझो, नाम रोशन करूंगी, मेरा हौसला बुलंद आसमां को छूंगी, सारी जिम्मेदारी बखूबी निभाऊंगी, बेटी हूँ मैं बेटी, मैं तारा बनूंगी, बेटी हूँ मैं बेटी, मैं तारा बनूंगी, बस जीने का हक छीना लेना, मैं सहारा बनूंगी, मैं तारा बनूंगी, बेटी हूँ मैं बेटी, मैं तारा बनूंगी, बेटी हूँ मैं बेटी, मैं तारा बनूंगी. मेरी नन्ही आँखों को सपने देखने दो, मेरे कोमल पंखों